Hi guys and welcome back. Today we have an appointment with high-level chess and we're going to look at a game by Magnus Carlsen in which he'll try to play the Barber's Mate. This incredible connection between high-level chess players and the Barber's Mate is really strange, but you should know that good old Magnus actually tried to deliver the Barber's Mate to Grandmaster Vokidov in a World Rapid Championship. So let's take a look at this game to see how it happened. Actually, Magnus, who obviously didn't manage to deliver the Barber's Mate, still justified the position in a not too negative way. Let's see what happened. First of all, for those who are just getting into our game of chess, I'll show you this Barber's Mate in 30 seconds. In other words, the Barber's Mate is the coordination between the bishop and the queen against the f7 square. So for example, queen to h5 in this position, with my two pieces, I'm threatening the h7 square. A very common mistake here is to play the move knight to f6, attacking the queen because the queen moves and delivers mate on h7. The king can't capture because of course the bishop is defending. How do you defend against the Barber's Mate? So at this point, let's say it. The Barber's Mate can be defended against in several ways. First of all, in my opinion, in this position, so the game continues with the bishop after bishop to c4. The Barber's Mate can simply be defended with the move knight to f6, which is an excellent move. Because of course it defends against a possible queen to h5 and also attacks the pawn on e4, which certainly doesn't hurt. However, this position can arise with the move queen to h5, a move that Carlsen played in the game. With this move, let's say we're not only setting up the Barber's Mate, but we're also attacking the pawn on e5. And so this time, in the case of knight to f6 attacking the queen, white could play queen takes e5. It's not the end of the world, because after bishop to e7, black then gains some development tempo with knight to c6, attacking the queen. So let's say he has full compensation for the pawn. However, if we don't want to lose the pawn, in any case we have to play the move knight to c6, and so we still take bishop to c4. At this point, the move g6 is the most common move. It's probably the strongest to defend ourselves from this scholar's mate. Be careful. Did you see why knight to c6? Because I have to defend the pawn on e5. For example, if in response to bishop I play this way, after queen to h5 I can no longer play. The move g6, because it's true that I've defended against the scholar's mate on f7, however, queen takes e5, double attack, not double check. That's something else. It's a double attack with check. And so I end up winning the rook. For this reason, then you need to defend the pawn. So then after queen to h5, there's g6. Anyway, with this chess introduction done, even for beginners, let's look at Carlsen's game, where here after g6 he played the move queen to f3. So he keeps trying for this scholar's mate, and here, let's say, black. In my opinion, Vokidov was a bit imprecise, as he played the move queen to e7, which is perfectly fine. Queen to e7 defends against mate and protects the bishop. The bishop will develop to g7 anyway, so it wouldn't have gone to c5, so queen e7, let's say, doesn't really prevent the bishop's development. However, in my opinion, the move knight to f6 to defend here is much more flexible. Here, it remains much more flexible because now I can develop with the knight. f6, bishop to g7 and castle, short castle, and then I decide what to do with the other pieces. Instead, queen to e7, let's say, loses some of that flexibility. So it's a rather strange move from a grandmaster. Carlsen continues with knight to e2. At this point, knight to f6, d3, and bishop to g7. We reach this position where Magnus actually found an interesting idea. Here he played knight to c3. Why is this idea interesting? Because here, let's say the classic ideas with c3 and then trying to take space in the center with d4 do not work well. They don't work. Because white has placed all the pieces a bit awkwardly. With knight to c3, on the other hand, we want to take advantage of the d5 square, which obviously it can become even more of a target when I want to play bishop to g5, pinning the knight. For this reason here, Vokidov plays h6, clearly worried about bishop to g5. And so Magnus continues with knight to d5, knight takes d5, and here, pawn takes d5. At this point, incredibly, with the move that Vokidov plays, Carlsen is already ahead, despite having lost so many tempi in the opening with the queen. This is because, as I told you before, Vokidov made a mistake by playing queen. A7 he should have played here right away. Knight f6, because that way this plan of Carlsen's, let's say it wasn't particularly strong because the queen wasn't on e7. And here basically white, so Carlsen already gets an advantage by playing, because black here plays knight to a5. Knight to a5. It's a perfectly normal move in this position, right? I want to take it, the pair of bishops, so why should knight to a5 be wrong? And yet it is, and now we'll see why. Here simply, black should have played knight to b4, and after bishop to b3 to obviously defend c2, the normal d6, let's say, and continue developing the pieces. However, here probably Vokidov got scared because after c3 the knight has to go to a6, which seems rather passive. But realistically, the knight immediately finds new life on c5. But obviously I understand that he might have been scared, because white will play d4 sooner or later and the knight will be under attack, so he probably saw this. And he said, okay, I'll put it on a 5, which doesn't hurt, and I'll exchange the bishop and take the pair. So all of this, obviously in a chess game, as you know, it's the small advantages that make the difference. And here what really makes the difference is that Carlsen is Carlsen, and here he finds d6. This beautiful pawn sacrifice, which surely completely escaped Vokidov's notice. Obviously I can't capture with the queen because queen takes f7 takes everything, so I have to capture with the pawn. So at the moment, black has this extra pawn, but Carlsen here plays bishop to d5, demonstrating his positional superiority. Now look, white is playing against black's pieces. This bishop cannot be developed, and above all, the d5 square will be completely under Carlsen's control in this position. The extra pawn is this one here. These are the extra pawns that, as you can see at the moment, are quite harmless. White, on the other hand, will have gained great initiative, so this is a great idea by Carlsen. Obviously, black tries to bring his pieces back into play, plays knight to c6, bishop to d2, normal development, queen to f6. And here, Carlsen doesn't want to exchange queens because white's position is very active, very dynamic. And so, obviously, I don't want to allow black to exchange queens, thus resolving part of this dynamism. So he plays queen to e4. Short castle, and on knight, e7, a logical move that attacks the bishop, just as I mentioned earlier. Carlsen fights for control of the d5 square by playing knight to c3. Vokidov tries again. He wants to exchange these queens. Carlsen, of course, politely declines the offer and places the queen on b4. And you can already see that white is starting to get things going. Black captures on d5, knight takes d5, and now the knight is extremely strong, also threatening the move knight to e7, so quite rightly, black plays king to h7. But Carlsen immediately regains material, knight to c7, attacking the rook. Rook to b8, queen takes d6, so now material equality has already been restored. Vokidov plays b6. So finally now he tries to develop the bishop, and here something truly incredible happens. The strongest chess player in the world misses a basic tactic and then loses a piece in one move. Here I invite you to pause the video to find this elementary tactic that would have allowed white to finish the game. Alright, let's see if you found it. Mare's 8. Great move. It's not just an uncovering by attacking the rook. Now obviously if I hit here, white hits the rook. If the rook moves, or in any case, any other move that defends the rook, even rook to b7, it does not change much. Let us put it on a 8. The real tactic is this: knight takes g7, king takes g7, and now white, regardless, has a huge advantage because they have regained the material and, of course, have very strong control over the dark squares. So white would also have a positional advantage. But here, there is actually a solution that ends it tactically. Bishop takes h6. King takes h6, queen takes f8. And so, the strongest chess player in the world, Magnus Carlsen, probably the strongest in history, misses this elementary tactic. And after bishop 6, f3, bishop b7, at this point let's say he plays rook e1, and after rook c8, which has a rather basic threat, I really cannot explain this game by Carlsen. Here black played rook f8, attacking the knight and threatening bishop f8. I threaten the queen, and after the queen moves I lose the knight. So it's clear that here I have to do something to defend myself. And here, knight to d5 seems like an almost forced move to avoid losing the piece. And for some reason, but here, Let me remind you that this game is still the World Rapid Championship, not Blitz, so they do have at least 15 minutes on the clock. So it's really strange here, Carlsen's move playing bishop to c3. Understandably, Vokidov can hardly believe he's about to beat the world champion. He plays bishop to f8, plays bishop to f8, and basically seals the game, because after that, okay. Here Carlsen directly gave up the queen, he sacrificed the queen outright, but in the case of queen takes a5, queen takes a5, bishop takes a5, here the simple d6 attacks the bishop and it removes the defense from c7. Now the bishop moves away and obviously rook takes c7. End of the game, black is up a piece. Carlsen directly decided to sacrifice the queen here by playing knight to b5, but after bishop takes d6, knight takes d6, queen e6. Let's say what follows isn't particularly useful, because here Carlsen even wins the exchange, but the material disadvantage is just too great. Here we're talking about Vokidov having a queen for a rook, so basically they played a couple more moves with Vokidov, who first closed the file, and just to avoid giving Carlsen any real initiative, and then, in short, he exchanged pieces and took advantage of the superiority of his queen. You can see the mobility of this queen, which basically penetrates forcefully into the rook's position. Rook to a7, but here, queen check, king to f2. After queen to d4, Carlsen decided to resign because obviously he can't even capture this due to the queen. h4 check. And obviously, let's say more material is lost, you can defend like this, but there's this unpleasant mate in 2, 1 and 2, so not great. Really a strange game, obviously. Today, guys, it's a rather fun game also to explain to beginners what the difference is to play this game. Also a bit for beginners to explain how to defend against these elementary chess mates like the fool's mate. The game, I don't know, I take it with a grain of salt. I think it's one of the most bizarre games Magnus Carlsen has ever played, really. At a very low level, but very well at the moment when he created the play here. Up to this point, I have to say, he really looked like Carlsen, and then it's truly inconceivable that in a winning position he first missed the tactic involving a knight. And then he directly left the piece hanging. Let's just say it's proof that even Carlsen is human sometimes. So, alright guys, a fun chess game today. I hope you still enjoyed it, even though from an educational point of view, perhaps it's not really that strong. And that's it as usual. If you want to support the channel, I invite you to subscribe, leave a like, hype, all those things you already know pretty well by now. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next videos.